Support continues to pour in for Deputy Darren Goforth's family and law enforcement. Some deputies say the large public support has restored the faith in the relationship between law enforcement and the community. This as the motive remains unclear. Harris County Sheriff Ron Hickman says he's concerned about the dangerous rhetoric, and Senator Ted Cruz blamed President Obama for the current climate. So what changes can we expect to see when it comes to police and our communities? That's our topic this half hour. We want to hear from you on our Fox 26 Facebook page. You can also weigh in on Twitter. Use the hashtag Fox26forlife. Joining us live in the newsroom is our panel, again led by our senior legal analyst Chris Tritico, news analyst Mustafa Tamiz, and public policy analyst Jackie Bally. Good morning again.
Good morning.
Do you all think that the rhetoric is out of control, and what can be done about that?
Well, the rhetoric's been growing for a couple of years now in a post-Ferguson world, if you will. The rhetoric and anti-police talk has been growing and growing and growing. And on the night that this deputy was unfortunately murdered for no apparent reason, in a press conference, Sheriff Hickman said a statement that I agree with. I don't agree with everything he said, but I agree with this. We've heard Black Lives Matter. We've heard Cops' Lives Matter. Let's just drop all that and say lives matter. And I agree with him on that. And that statement alone was, in my view, his attempt to change the discussion from us versus them and start talking about how we can heal this problem. Now, the Chronicle came out in opposition to both Devin Anderson and Ron Hickman's statements that night, saying they were too quick to throw this as a Black Lives Matter and a racial issue when we don't know what it was. But that's part of the problem, I think, is that we are too quick to jump into this, Mustafa Tamiz, and say this is what it was when we don't know. And I'm not talking about just Deputy Goforth, I'm talking about in general. And then you add Ted Cruz on there and the conservatives saying this is all the president's fault. That's rhetoric in and of itself.
Yeah, but in this particular case, we do actually have some understanding. This individual has been in 2 different mental institutions in the state of Texas. His mother had called the police on him when he threw a television set across and she feared her life. He beat up another individual at a Salvation Army facility. He has had an altercation with the police beforehand. All the stuff has happened way before Black Lives ever came along. There's been no indication through social media or something that he's been connected with that movement in any way, shape, or form. We don't even know if he knows it exists. This is a very troubled individual who has a lot of mental health issues. Now, having said that, I don't really care about his issues. The fact that he killed the deputy means that he should get the harshest penalty.
And they're moving that direction.
And there should be no equivocation about that. But at the same time, we shouldn't try to use this as a way to make political points. We shouldn't use a death of an officer to score political points. And I think that's wrong.
How do we change the narrative? We've had this going on for a long time. We've sat here and we've talked about the rise in us versus them with respect to the police. Mm-hmm. How do we change that narrative?
I think one of the first things that we would like to see is the president come out. We've had 7 deaths, 7 law enforcement officers killed in the last 8 days. And the same way the president has come out in past incidents with Eric Brown and others, it would be nice to see the president come out and say, look, this has got to stop. The assault on law enforcement officers has to end. These are people, men and women, who are out there trying to protect us, and it's time that we respect them. It would be nice to have him as our leader do that in the same way he showed compassion for other deaths and for other instances. We haven't seen that so far. Hopefully that's coming. Also, those who say that the rhetoric is not out there, all you have to do is go on social media. You will see many groups, and unfortunately they're tied to people who look like me, who have a lot of hatred messages and statements out there that's inciting this racism, that's pushing this racism, and saying it's Black lives versus cops. All you have to do is Google it. It's out there. So unfortunately, that is not something that's being made up. It's something that's out there and prevalent. But I do think our leaders need to come out, our leadership, our president, We did see our Attorney General, and I think that's very good, but our President has to come out like he has in the past with other deaths and say, stop the assault on law enforcement
And
officers.
I got to go to social media. Coming back, I want to talk about Ted Cruz and some of the conservatives continuing to blame this on the president. Is that rhetoric in and of itself? But let me go to Sally. She's monitoring our social media.
All right, let's take a look at our Fox 26 Facebook page. Kira says, just sad, my husband is a cop and I'm afraid for him every time he goes to work. I tell him to make it home by any means necessary. Sheila says, why isn't he blaming the killer, referring here to Ted Cruz? The killer had the gun, pulled the trigger 15 times and left the scene. President Obama didn't do that. And then Sean says, by killing Officer Goforth, a sleeping giant called the silent majority was awakened. And he goes on to say that that silent majority is made up of every race, religion, sexual preference, etc. And we've certainly seen, I mean, such an outpouring of support this week, unlike I've ever seen before. And we always see that in Houston. Whenever there is a bad event, there are so many people willing to step up to help.
And I, too, can't think of an outpouring of support this strong and this sustained for anyone and good. And that ought to be the catalyst to change the discussion from us versus them to how we heal this problem. But are our political leaders fostering the continued rhetoric in and of themselves? And I'm specifically talking about Ted Cruz, who came out this week and blamed the president.
No, look, my father was retired as a civilian from NYPD after 18 years of service. In that time that he served, over 77 police officers were shot down at different points. There were Republican presidents, there were Democratic presidents. I didn't see a whole lot of them come around. Unfortunately, we see this happen far too often, where people that put their lives in harm's way to defend us, they are injured or they're killed. I think that this is too important to start saying it's that guy's fault, it's this guy's fault, because it just ratchets up and it makes it difficult for the police because we can't build bridges amongst communities.
Before I go back to Jackie, I want you to answer the same question. How do we change the discussion?
I think people have to use good judgment and they have to stop trying to score political points when it comes to law enforcement, because it actually puts the law enforcement in more danger when you begin to do these type of things.
I do think that I agree with Sally's comments. I think I love the way that Houston has come together. Many races, ethnicities, we've come together to rally behind the family of the slain deputy, and that's very typical of Houston, and I'm very proud of our citizens and residents for doing that. I've already said, I feel if our president were to come out, and Mustafa's right, in the past presidents have not commented on deaths or killings, but this president has, and he has not come out and commented on the 7 deaths in the last 8 days as he had with others. So he has set a precedent, and I think if he actually came out as our leader, that would help in the calming and the community. The way that Houston has come together to talk about this, that's what we need the nation to do.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. And our hearts go out to the family of Deputy Goforth and everyone who spends every day putting their lives on the line for us. And like Kira said, go out there and be safe and come home to your families.